Hello and welcome to episode 100 of Driver Suit Blog Radio. As always, I'm your host, David G. Firestone. You know, when I started this podcast at the beginning of 2022, I had no idea what was coming. I didn't think it would last too long. I knew what it wanted to be. I had a good idea of what I wanted to be. But it's not that anymore, and it's become so much more. I mean, it still really doesn't feel real, 100 episodes of this. But it is real. Okay, with the gushy stuff out of the way, let's get to the main topic of this week's podcast. Now, anybody who knows me knows I'm an energy drink guy. I can't stand coffee. I haven't had coffee since 2006. And I've tried so many different kinds of energy drinks over the years. Some are still made, some aren't. And there are some extremes that brand themselves to be a bit more extreme than others. Some are much more controversial than others. But we're going to be talking about an energy drink sponsorship snafu. I'm going to be discussing the book Racing with Rich Energy. Say that 3 times fast. Racing with Rich Energy, How a Rogue Sponsor Took Formula One for a Ride. This is a book by Alanis King and Elizabeth Blackstock. I highly recommend the book. It is an absolutely fascinating read that will keep you gripped from cover to cover. So the focus of this story is the British-based energy drink company Rich Energy. Supposedly, the Rich Energy drink was made in 2009. Now, I say this because anything that Rich Energy or their CEO William Storey claims should be taken with a grain of salt. Now, the company was followed by William Storey in 2015. Storey is a real piece of work in and of himself. These are a few claims that he's made about himself according to Wikipedia. Quote, He claims to have had short spells in the RAF or possibly the ATC, accounts differ, as a professional footballer for QPR reserves, as a professional gambler, and as a tobacco farmer in Zimbabwe. He followed a sports management company, William Storey Management, though some of his filings at Companies House described him as a computer consultant. He traded for many years as Trifan Technologies and IT Consultancy, end quote. Now, his filings with Company House need to be discussed here, because William Storey is not afraid to lie in filings on Company House. He claims at one point that when it comes to Rich Energy, he had a 20 million some odd pound production facility, though no such facility exists, as well as having at one point sold 50 million cans of Rich Energy in 1 year. To understand how stupid this claim is, think about this. Rich Energy only does business in the United Kingdom. There are a total of 66 million people in the United Kingdom. This means that everybody within the United Kingdom would have had to have had at least one can of this, and that leaves another. Even then, it would still not be a fair number. Let's just say that he's full of crap, and he's a delusional narcissist who loves to spin tall tales and yarns. His involvement in Formula One is what helped made this story a classic. Now, we all know what happened with Haas Energy. I'll get to that. With Stuart Haas Racing and Rich Energy. I'll get to that in a minute. But his first attempt to get into Formula One was when he attempted to purchase Sahara Force India in 2008. Sahara Force India justifiably said no, but Rich Energy kept trying and trying, albeit to no avail. So, since this attempt failed, he realized that Haas F1 needed a new sponsor, and so a deal was struck for the 2019 season. Now, Haas F1, by their own admission, claims, we didn't do our due diligence on Rich Energy. That is to say, they didn't go look him up on Google for 5 minutes, because if they had, they'd have said, go fuck yourself. I mean, the false Company House filings should have been a signal right then and there. And they at one point had like 700 pounds in their bank accounts as a company. It's not enough to fund a single employee, let alone a company that's supposedly worth multi-millions of pounds of money. So after the initial payment, Haas F1 didn't receive a single payment for the rest of this fiasco. So none of this is made public until the British Grand Prix, and what precipitated that whole thing was Player 3, White Bikes, in this scenario. Now, Rich Energy had pilfered White Bike's logo and created it as their own. White Bikes was not happy about this, filed a trademark case and won. And in this case, Rich Energy had to pay White Bikes something like £16,000. Seemingly small amount of money, right? Well, it's a small amount of money provided you have the money and you're not committing active fraud. Okay, so in this situation, you are Rich Energy and you don't have the money to pay anybody who you owe money to, and you are desperate to get out of your contract with Haas F1. How do you go about this? Do you A, go to Haas F1, explain the situation, and try to figure out a way out of this contract? B, hire a lawyer to examine the contract word by word to figure a way out of it? Or C, randomly announce on Twitter you are sacking Haas F1 due to their poor performance? Well, they chose option C, and it worked out just about as well as one would expect. Now, I should mention that during the 2019 season, Haas F1's performance was abysmal. They were back of the pack most of the year. They didn't score many points. They were seen as a joke by a lot of the F1 roster to begin with, and this didn't really help their reputation. They didn't need this whole thing with Rich Energy, but they kept going on. They ignored the tweets as one normally would, and then the fateful weekend came. British Grand Prix weekend. Cars show up with Rich Energy logos on them, and Rich Energy tweeted the now infamous legendary tweet. At Haas F1 Team Love, at Rich Energy. By the way, let me just before I continue with the tweet, Rich Energy, and a quote in the book basically says, Rich Energy tweets themselves in their own tweets, which is basically like saying hi to yourself every morning. That was a great line, by the way. So anyway, at Haas F1 Team Love, at Rich Energy so much, parentheses, we don't blame them because we don't blame them as hashtag better than Red Bull, parentheses. They have kept our brand livery on the car even if we sack them for poor performance. Hashtag Rich Energy, hashtag F1, hashtag British GP 2019, hashtag business, hashtag world class, hashtag ONYERBIKE, hashtag no bull. Now, the better than Red Bull thing is going to come up in a little bit, but we'll get to that. So this whole fiasco continues until the Italian Grand Prix, when the partnership was no more. Haas moved on from Rich Energy, and in a sane world, Rich Energy was no more, so this is where the story ends, except that it didn't. So another part in the book that gets discussed to a certain degree is the trademark dispute between Red Bull and Haas and Rich Energy, because Red Bull got tired of Rich Energy using their name and trademarks, so a lawsuit was filed. Now, there was this whole thing about, a new guy coming in and taking over the Twitter account and all of the stuff being cleared. In actuality, it now appears as though they were doing it to try to prevent a judgment against them in court, which went about as well as you would expect. But Rich Energy didn't get the hint, and they continued sponsoring other races, teams, and athletes in other sports. But since you can't buy their drinks anymore, they're pretty much dead. I swear to you, I went to the Rich Energy website in researching this episode. All that's there is the following text with some pictures, and I'll put a link in the description. Rich Energy is a premium British energy drink developed to be the best available on the market. Made with pure mountain spring water and luxury ingredients, this high-quality beverage raises the bar in the sector. Since 2015, Rich Energy has achieved unprecedented sporting success. We have had multiple world champion ambassadors, including world middleweight champion Gennady Golovkin, GENNADY world scooter champion Dakota Schutz, and Yasmin of the Year Alex Thompson. We were the first sponsor of West Ham United women's team in 2007, and secured a deal for the Rich Haas Energy Formula One team in 2018. I wouldn't be bragging about that if I were you. In 2019, we competed in IndyCar and sponsored various motorsport teams. In 2022, Rich Energy won 3 Elite Motorsport Championships. Rich Energy BTC Racing won the independent team title in the British Touring Cars. Rich Energy OMG Racing won the British Superbike title. And Rich Energy Ducati won the Ducati Tri-Options Cup. In 2023, we have continued our investment in motorsport and beyond, and are growing our market share internationally. Now, you know what you don't see when you go to their website? You know what you don't see? A little button that every other food manufacturer, not just energy drinks, but every food manufacturer, has 2 things on their websites. An option to buy online, a location guide where to buy. Rich Energy doesn't have this. You go to their official Amazon page. Sold out, don't know when we're coming, don't know when we're getting more. Look it up on Google Shopping, you'll find absolutely nothing. This company is dead. And there's no way you could ever sell the name or the trademarks, because the brand is so tainted and so contaminated and so undesirable that no one's ever going to buy it. It's amazing to me. I mean, is this money laundering? Is this fraud? What is going on here? I'm sitting here racking my brain right now, trying to figure out what was the. I have a question for every single one of these scams where it's obvious you're going to get caught in the end. What's your end game? I'm being serious here. What's your end game? No investor's ever going to be a part of your company. The brand's just too tainted. You weren't producing energy drinks, so you can't fall back on the, well, we're a struggling energy drink company, but we are making product. Nope, don't have that. You didn't have enough money to buy a ticket to Formula One in this day and age, let alone buy a Formula One team in Sahara Virginia or sponsor one with Haas F1. What was the end game here? Someone explain this to me. And by the way, do these people who commit fraud like this, do they honestly think they're not going to get caught? Do people really not understand the concept of evidence anymore? Believe it or not, and I know this is going to sound amazing to, your average criminal, but the police and the authorities and law enforcement, they're smarter than you. I know. They'll figure you out, no questions asked. Look at all the other people who are smarter than you and who've gotten busted for fraud and gone to jail. How is this not being seen as a criminal? I want someone to explain this to me. Based on everything that you've seen from Haas F1, based on everything that takes place in the book between, just flat out fraudulent filings, fraudulent claims, how is this not being investigated as a money laundering or a criminal entity? In this country, the story would have been in jail a long time before this, but it's an energy drink that doesn't produce, it's an energy drink company that doesn't produce energy drinks. Just think about that for a second. It's an energy drink company that doesn't produce energy drinks. It's like naming a restaurant Burger Barn and only serving chicken. What sense does that make? And who is buying? I think is Story still with the company? Believe it or not, I did a lot of research on this. I don't know if Story's still with the company or not, or what's going on, but whatever he's spent on this is money that he's never seeing again. And I think he's going to go to, if he hasn't gone to jail by now, he's not going, period, because obviously the people who have the most to lose clearly don't give a shit. But this whole thing, this is actually worse than DC Solar. DC Solar actually did manufacture a number of, they didn't manufacture anywhere near the number they claimed they had, but they did manufacture some generators. This one, they're not even attempting to try and make energy drinks or fake energy drinks, because another thing that gets brought up in the book is that the two authors discussed what the product tasted like, and pretty much everyone who tasted it all said the same thing. It's basically a Red Bull clone. Now, don't misunderstand me. When done right, a Red Bull clone can actually be pretty decent. But in this particular case, it's like you couldn't tell the difference one way or the other. So, in conclusion, Racing with an Energy Drink, How a Rogue Sponsor Took Formula One for a Ride by Alanis King and Elizabeth Blackstock is a very, very well-researched book on the subject. They go into a lot more detail than I can get into here. And to be honest with you, I think the book is a little more costly than it should be, but it's definitely worth a read. So with that, episode 100 comes to an end. Next week, something fun for episode 101. I'm Dave Faustin. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next week.